Hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to have folks joining right on time. We really appreciate it. We have a really packed agenda. And so we're going to jump right into today's webinar on climate resilient buildings, tools and insights for municipalities. I will be your host for today. My name is Bo Shane. I am a project officer with the Green Municipal Fund, and I am joined by my teammates, Ray Landrio and Mohammed Shami, who are working on the production side of things. And we're really thrilled to have a phenomenal panel of speakers here today to share some really valuable resources. I would now like to take a moment to reflect and acknowledge the lands upon which I live, work, and play have served and continue to serve as the traditional lands for many peoples over time, including the Attawandaron and the Haudenosaunee. This is Treaty 3 lands, which is also known as the Between the Lakes Treaty, and it's held with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. It lies directly adjacent to the Haldimand Tract and is part of a long-established traditional hunting grounds for the Six Nations of the Grand River. And just west of Treaty 3 lies Treaty 29, which is the Huron Tract Purchase. And today, July 10th, is the anniversary of the signing of the Huron Tract Purchase in 1827. As part of today's moment of reflection, I would like to share a report that was released last year. So I'm just going to take a moment to add that to the chat for everyone. Ray, if you don't see it pop up, it's also in our notes for you to add. I think I got it. There we go. And that report is our For Our Future's Indigenous Resilience Report. Some of you may have seen this already, but if you haven't, we encourage you to check it out. It aims to recognize, highlight, and elevate Indigenous-led work in climate change impacts and resilience in Canada. All right. Hopefully, today is not the first time you are hearing about the Green Municipal Fund, but just in case it is, today's webinar is actually part of a broader GMF webinar series that is hosted by the Green Municipal Fund, GMF. It is the largest program offered by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. GMF offers a unique mix of funding paired with resources and support and training. And in just a few slides from now, my teammate Agat will dive further into one specific GMF initiative that is designed to support municipalities advance climate adaptation work. But first, I'd like to share these four smiling faces with you. The ones you see on the screen are our wonderful panel speakers we have today. We have Lucas Coletta from Natural Resources Canada, Devin Cosley from Housing, Infrastructure and Communities Canada, Pooria Jafarpur from the Canadian Centre for Climate Services with Environment and Climate Change Canada. And finally, Charmeline Mendes-Millard from Partners for Action at the University of Waterloo. They will each be giving a short presentation spotlighting tools and resources that support designing and retrofitting climate resilient buildings. But before we can dive into those spotlights, we are going to hear a really quick little overview from my teammate Agat about a funding opportunity. It just launched this week, and it funds climate adaptation projects, including projects like climate resilient buildings. So I am going to pass the mic over to Agat, invite Agat to unmute herself. Wonderful, take it
Thanks so
away.
much. Awesome. Thanks so much, Bo. Hi, everyone. My name is Agat Moho, and I'm the Outreach Advisor with the Green Municipal Fund. So, great session ahead today. And as you're gathering inspiration from speakers today, I want to just take a moment to plant a seed in your head about funding opportunities, as Bo mentioned. So, the Adaptation in Action funding stream that you see up on your screen on the right-hand side just launched this week. So we're currently in a live intake. So welcoming projects that will help advance your community's adaptation needs. So under this funding stream, we can support projects like upgrade and retrofits to municipal buildings that will increase the resilience to specific climate hazards. And I'd also like to share an invitation with you of a webinar that is happening on July 22nd at just around noontime for folks around folks in the Eastern time zone, which will dive into how to submit a strong application to the Adaptation and Action Funding Stream. Tips and tricks, as well as all the context that you need to understand that specific funding stream. And I will leave my little seed to that. I will hopefully let the seed grow in your mind, and please don't hesitate to reach out. We have an entire team dedicated to supporting you scope your projects, understand the funding stream, navigate our resources, and all of that. So I'd invite you, if you'd like to book a meeting with us, you can use the QR code that's up on the screen. We'll also pop it in the chat. And you have my contact information as well that's up on the screen. So I will hand it back over to you, Bo. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Agat. Really appreciate you taking some time to give us a quick overview. For those who weren't able to grab the QR codes on the screen, the links have also been posted in the chat for that webinar and also for signing up to connect with Agat and Agat's team. All right, so this brings us to our presentations. As mentioned before, we're going to hear 4 short presentations from our panelists, and that will be followed by some quick panel questions, and we'll wrap up with questions from the audience. I want to remind you that we encourage you to put your questions into the Q&A box anytime during the webinar. And again, if your question is for a specific individual, because they'll each be presenting different tools and resources, it can be helpful for you to include that when you submit your question. And with that, I'm going to invite Lucas Coletta from Natural Resources Canada to take the floor.
Amazing. Thanks, Bo, and welcome everybody. My name is Lucas Coletta. I'm a senior engineer with Natural Resources Canada, and me and my team lead boots on the ground efforts to engage Canada's home building and renovation industry so that together we can improve the performance of housing. Our mandate is to develop affordable solutions to make homes more resilient and energy efficient, and to advance our building codes. Today, I'm going to share some very important work underway and resources that have been developed by NRCan and FireSmart Canada, along with wildfire and housing experts across the country to better protect our homes and communities from wildfires. Next slide, please. Here's a quick snapshot of last summer's housing and climate events from across Canada. In just 2 months, we saw over $6 billion in insurable losses for housing infrastructure. This has many Canadians, including governments, thinking about climate adaptation and asking, what are we doing about it? We're starting to ask critical questions like, what happens to affordability when insurance rates skyrocket or insurers outright refuse coverage? How many tax dollars are needed to rebuild communities? And what's the cost of a house when you have to build it twice? And ultimately, how can we protect our investments in housing? Next slide, please. In Canada, we need to do better and think about housing as a societal asset that we are collectively responsible for and contributing to. Those contributions, whether through government taxes or insurance premiums, increase every time homes and communities face damage from climate hazards. For example, to cover the cost of rebuilding homes in Jasper, insurance companies will use their pot of funds that has been built up over time with insurance premiums collected from all of their policyholders. When big events like a wildfire happen, that pot empties quick and has to be quickly replenished. So insurance premiums must then increase for all policyholders. And similarly, tax dollar spending at all levels of government is increasing to cover costs for rebuilding community infrastructure. The choices to not adapt are costing all Canadians. Building resilient homes and communities is a very important step toward improving affordability of housing in Canada. Next slide, please. One of the major threats to our built environment and economic success is wildfires. Per capita, wildfires are the most expensive natural disaster we face. The materials and designs we've been using for our homes and buildings in the past and still today are vulnerable to the attack of wildfires through embers, flames, and extreme heat. Our goal is to defend against the first ignition of a structure, which then often leads to uncontrolled spread of a fire to neighboring structures, and in some cases, the entire loss of communities. NRCan has been working on developing fire-smart construction best practices for housing and communities in high wildfire risk areas. And our current understanding of how wildfires interact with houses is quite advanced. Through learnings from events like Jasper, Lytton, and Fort McMurray, and some of the research and testing we are conducting, we know how to reduce the risk of damage from wildfires for our homes. Next slide, please. Play the video. Maybe you have to click one more time. One of the major threats to our built environment, like I said, is wildfires. And an example of our work in testing and research is the testing of housing components. Due to the large surface area of walls, they can be one of the most vulnerable and easily ignited parts of a house. We tested exterior wall systems and materials commonly used in Canada to understand how they would perform during a wildfire event. As you can see, there are some very vulnerable types of walls out there, particularly ones with vinyl and wood siding, which are quite common in high wildfire risk areas. Whereas materials like fiber cement board can resist ignition for extended periods of time and protect the structure. Combustible siding materials ignite easily and put extreme stress on the soffit and interior elements of the wall, often leading to the total loss of structures. Our recommendation for exterior walls are to use non-combustible siding materials, and our overall objective is to have a continuous system of non-combustible materials that encapsulates the entire structure. This could be your asphalt singles with a metal soffit and fiber cement siding, along with a few other features around windows, openings, and gutters, and they can all be found in FireSmart's wildfire resilient housing resources. Next slide, please. Our world-class knowledge, combined with what places like California and Australia already know, has helped inform the development of these critical resources. FireSmart Canada has released a new edition of the Residential Development Guide and Landscaping Guide to help builders, developers, renovators, planners, and policymakers ensure that homes in their communities are wildfire resilient. These documents have checklists that anyone can follow and use. They offer solutions and examples for how to reduce the risk of damage to a structure by making construction and landscaping decisions that reduce available fuels and harden the structure to the threat of wildfires. There is also a more interactive resource. FireSmart Canada has a very informative and engaging industry-focused half-day workshop that has been developed and delivered in more than 15 municipalities across Western Canada. You get to hear from a number of voices and perspectives, including insurers and technical experts on wildfire resilient housing. You will gain the knowledge on how to implement these strategies, both in construction and regulation. If you go to the next slide, please. These are some links that you can scan to access these resources. Similarly, if you're interested in bringing this workshop to your community, please feel free to reach out to Ryan at FireSmart Canada. His email is there on the top right. And FireSmart would be happy to work with your local FireSmart representatives and schedule an interactive educational session. With that, I'd like to wrap it up and say thank you, and we'll be around to answer questions later on.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you so much. I'm going to pause on this slide to make sure folks have a chance to grab that information. It's also been posted in the chat. I'm certain folks are going to be keen on making sure they grab Ryan. I think it's Ryan's contact information
That's
for
right.
the workshops. I know that Lucas and others have been really busy delivering those half-day workshops over the last month or so. And so I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you've been so busy to prepare for today and to join us. And I know that I've heard great things, so I'm sure that others will be interested in signing up for those workshops and reaching out. And that information is in the chat. Thank you. Now I'm going to introduce Devin Cosley from Housing, Infrastructure and Communities Canada and invite him to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Bo, and thank you everybody for joining us today. As Bo mentioned, I'm Devin Cosley with Housing Infrastructure Communities Canada, leading our work on outreach engagement with communities. Excited to be here joining you from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin-Anishinaabe people here in Ottawa. To talk to you about the Climate Toolkit for Housing and Infrastructure, which is basically a support program that very much complements some of the funding you've heard about from GMF, some of the data and support services you'll hear from the Canadian Centre for Climate Services team later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. So we've just launched back in October as a support program to help communities in building better infrastructure projects, whether reducing the emissions and energy consumption in those projects or becoming more resilient to climate impacts, hazards, and other factors. We're shaped around three core services based on meeting your community and your need. They're not meant to be done in any particular order. but really reflect where you are in understanding either your climate factors or the projects that might be in your capital plan or community development plans. First off the top, we have a climate help desk. So this is sort of a support service you can reach out to by phone, by email, web form, and schedule a time to talk to somebody who can help guide you towards what might be the best risk assessment guide for a climate hazard you're facing. What are the climate requirements associated with a federal funding program intake, or what might be some of the federal funding streams best suited for your project and be available. Our Climate Insights platform is the web-based component where you can come and explore options, potential solutions to your infrastructure challenge or climate challenge, as well as explore some geospatial maps on different layers related to climate, infrastructure, and social equity dimensions. And third, of course, is our roster of climate infrastructure experts. This is the deepest level of support where you probably already have a project in mind. You have a sense of the risk. Perhaps you know your building is at risk of wildfire, and this will pair you with an expert to help identify specific solutions of what you can do in response. Next slide. To give more example of how this applies to a resilient building, and in particular the case of wildfires, which unfortunately are a major theme this year, we could be helping you to learn and understand where those risks are and what buildings those might be faced through the climate help desk with identifying some of those tools, case studies, or funding availability through our Climate Insights platform with some of those potential areas of focus, looking at those geospatial maps, extreme heat days, where critical infrastructure is located, or looking at your options. And now you understand some of your risks and you're really looking focused on solutions. The platform can help you look at what some of those specifically are. All of those options have been developed by a team of engineers, and it's delivered through ICLEI Canada, which is an organization many on this call are probably already familiar with, or tap into our roster of experts delivered by the Canadian Urban Institute and a network of partners that might be able to help you with a cohort that's looking to work with some of those fire expert organizations to go further. Next slide, please. So since launching, we've already got lots of examples of communities that have been using these services, both around municipal buildings and other facilities. We are also increasingly focused on community housing, public housing, and how we can support communities in building further, faster, and more resilient housing in those areas. But just two examples we've started with here from our help desk, looking at a smaller community. And we're really focused on those communities of under 5,000 in particular in terms of capacity. We are open to anybody, but really trying to fill that smaller community capacity gap. And also with our roster of infrastructure experts. This is an example where they're really getting down to a specific building, a hazard, and what they're providing in terms of feedback in terms of design features and design changes that can be made. Next slide. You've already heard some of it about code standards guidance. One of the roles of one of our other teams in the department is really helping to build out new codes and standards to fill gaps, update those. We've heard a lot about where some haven't been updated in a while. That is a big effort right now, along with the National Research Council and Standards Council of Canada. Those are being brought to the Climate Insights platform, so you can find those through easily searchable filters, including ones related to wildfires, buildings, and resilience, as an example. And there's a lot more coming. We're only in the second year of a 5-year initiative, and this will be updated on a every monthly basis with new content and every 6 months with a new release. Next slide, please. So just two areas to invite you as a next step. Reach out to our climate help desk if you've got a question, consideration. You'll also be able to reach out to me directly as well, or consider exploring the Climate Insights platform, and encourage you to kind of play around with it and connect back with us after that as well. Next slide. This is just how you can reach me if you'd like more information or subscribe to our we'll be developing a newsletter so you can receive further information. Or Chad Nelson listed here is leading that work on codes and standards, and their team is always interested to hear about gaps where they could help you more in the future. It's back to you, Bo.
Thank you, Devin. Really appreciate you taking the time for that. I'll note that lots of links were posted in the chat while Devin was speaking. And Devin, I appreciated that you flagged that although the help desk is really for everyone, you are really trying to make sure that you fill that gap for smaller communities in terms of building up their capacity. Some of the examples you gave around the help desk talked about coming to the help desk with a specific question or problem. For those communities that are small and are just getting started, I'm assuming they could still contact the help desk if they're just trying to navigate climate insights and figure out even sort of where to begin with that platform.
That's correct.
Wonderful. Thank you. I would now like to welcome Puriya Jafarpur from the Canadian Centre for Climate Services to take the floor.
Great. Thank you, Bo, and hello, everyone. My name is Puriya Jafarpur. I'm a climate scientist with the Canadian Centre for Climate Services at Environment and Climate Change Canada. And today I'll be sharing about one of the resources we have available on climatedata.ca portal that supports resilient building design. Next slide, please. But before we get into the resource, I want to share a bit about who we are and what we do at the Canadian Centre for Climate Services. So we're a multidisciplinary team with expertise across a broad range of climate-related disciplines. And our mission at the Canadian Centre for Climate Services is to provide all Canadians with data, information, guidance, and support them in any way we can so they can start thinking about climate change in their decision making and in their different phases of their projects. We have an email address and a website and a phone number that you can reach us at. And if you have any questions or feedback for us, you can contact us. Next slide, please. In terms of what we do at CCCS, so we provide access to a number of climate data sets and climate data portals for a variety of users and sectors. Users can visualize the data, download the data, analyze the data using some of the tools that we have. We also provide assistance and expert advice for users and professionals on using climate data and understand the principles of climate science. We also have an outreach and engagement team at CCCS that they participate in outreach efforts to increase awareness and show the availability of relevant data sets that we have. They also do engagement to understand and address any user needs and find where the data gaps are so we can support those as well. And at CCCS, we collaborate with provinces, territories, different jurisdictions, as well as climate science experts to provide useful climate data to all Canadians. And on this last point, next slide, please. We have here's a map of that shows the regional climate organizations across Canada. So at CCCS, we work with and support these networks of regional climate organization to provide local services across Canada. So you can always reach your regional climate service provider or CCCS for climate data information. Next slide, please. So yeah, the resource that I would like to share with you today is the future building design value summaries. These summaries are meant to give you easy access to future climate data for building design. These design values were actually developed using climate projection data for updates to the next iteration of the National Building Code, as well as the Highway Bridge Design Code. And at CCCS, we have synthesized some of the climate data information that were relevant to buildings into a one-page PDF document called Future Building Design Value Summaries that can be pasted into drawings of record or specifications by engineers and architects at different stages of design. So each summary document includes location-specific historical and future projection values of design variables like temperature, rain, heating degree days, driving rain, snow load, wind pressure, just to name a few, and they're available for mid-century as well as end of the century. And these summaries also include some links to resources where users can find more in-depth guidance. Next slide, please. And these summaries are meant to give users easy access to future climate design data that can support their work even before it's required by the building code. So on the right is an example of one of these files, for example, for Ottawa. And there are more than 660 stations available across Canada. And this table that you see is consistent with the locations available in the National Building Code, as well as the table C2 of the Building Code. So now that you know what the future building design value summaries are, here's what you need to know about how and when to use them. These summaries are now available on climatedata.ca, and we encourage everyone to start using them to support their planning decisions. Meeting the evolving standard of care and prepare for upcoming code updates. And getting started is very simple. You can go to climatedata.ca, search for design value summaries in the variables tab, and explore the different values for each of the location that you might be interested in, and you can download these summaries for your location. And if you need help, there is guidance and links within each of the summary files. And you can also, again, reach us at the Canadian Centre for Climate Services support desk for any help with the data. And next slide. And yeah, thanks again. We do have, again, an email address, a website that you can reach us if you have any additional questions or looking for a specific data set. Thanks, Bo.
Thank you, Puria. That was wonderful to see. I spent a moment peeking around the map showing all the different stations, and it's really great to see the fantastic coverage that you have across Canada. I was curious for some of the smaller communities that might not have a specific data set for their particular community. Do you have any advice in terms of whether they pick a nearby community or whether they should perhaps reach out to your support desk in that case?
Yeah, so there are additional tools. One was created by the Pacific Climate Impacts Consortium, PCIC, the regional climate service provider for BC, and they have actually interpolated the data between stations. So there is a map that covers all Canada, and the tool is called the Design Value Summaries.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. All right, then. I see there was a request for a link to the design value summaries link. Ray has posted it. Ray, I'm seeing it's not a live link. If you're able to play around with that and make them live links, I'm sure that'd be appreciated, but it's also possible to copy and paste them. So that has been posted in the chat. And I'm just looking at the chat for anything else. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Ray. Okay, let's move along to Charmelene. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce Charmelene Mendes-Millard from Partners for Action at the University of Waterloo. Charmelene, I welcome you to take the mic.
Thank you so much, Bo, and to everyone for joining us today. So I'm Charmelene, Director of Partners for Action at the University of Waterloo, joining you from the traditional territory of Semiahmoo First Nation in White Rock, BC, where I grew up and where I'm visiting my mom. So it's always good to be home. For those of you who don't know, Partners for Action, or P4A, is an initiative that was co-created with cooperators and Farm Mutual Re, the insurance industry, to advance equity-informed flood resiliency through collaborative and applied research and outreach, seeking to empower Canadians to reduce flood and multi-hazard risk through evidence-based and inclusive awareness and preparedness actions. So the research that I'm here to share with you is very related to what Devin presented with the Climate Insight Initiative, where we have a site called Climate Resilience climate resilient retrofits.ca, excuse me. I hope the QR code is working there. That is to house a few things, but mainly a database of retrofits or really measures that could even be incorporated into new builds that take multiple hazards into account. So we have all kinds of resources, infographics, guides, standards, brochures, checklists, here, there, everywhere. A few years ago, we started this initiative with Halifax Regional Municipality, who was facing multiple hazards all at once and wondered how to not only manage their own assets and properties, but how to even start to encourage residential and non-residential property owners to do retrofits for adaptation so that they could withstand floods and fire and heat and extreme wind, etc. So really, at the end of the day, I want you to think of this as a repository of a collection of all the measures that you can take that you can then filter by hazard and think about multiple ones all at once. So you don't have to just look at flood in isolation or just extreme wind in isolation. You can see how these things interact and what to do if you're facing all of these things all at once. Next slide, please. So there was a lot that went into this. I've got 10 students who have worked with me over the past couple of years to do this research on, how do multiple hazards affect buildings and their inhabitants? What can you do about it? And how do those measures interact? So our database, if you could just go back one, please. I'm sorry, the animation just went ahead there. So how does our database help reduce risk for the most prevalent hazards in Canada today? We synthesize information all in one place. We spent a lot of time with people from different departments, and I get students from different departments to think about what makes sense, what do we need to know, what are the problems, what are the solutions, and what resources do you need to look at for more information. We include photos, etc. This slide shows you parameters that we took into account. So people not only want to know what to do, but when you're faced with so many different priorities, you have site-specific considerations. You might be interested in what will cost you the least amount of money and can be done on a weekend versus what needs to be done over the long term and make you move out of your home. There are all kinds of things you have to consider. So we included those considerations into the database as well. So parameters that you might filter by in terms of cost, time, expertise, invasiveness, and energy use and emissions so that you can integrate adaptation and mitigation measures together. Another unique feature of our research and database are those interactions between measures. So what conflicts with one another, what coordinates with one another, and what complements one another. Conflicting, as it might, be obvious, is what works against each other. If you do something when you are trying to prevent floods, but you also are concerned about wildfire, what are the things that you need to be aware of? So for example, planting vegetation, of course, can help with extreme heat and reducing flood risk, but depending on where you plant it, that can increase your wildfire risk. Coordinating is if you're going to do something like open up your wall or replace your windows anyway, what else should you do at the same time for the hazards of your concern? So that's what's coordinating. If you're replacing old windows, consider adding a low emissivity coating at the same time, for example. Complementary means you do one thing, but then it helps you with multiple things. So airtight sealants, for example, help protect buildings against wildfires and extreme heat and floods. So there was a lot of work done to think about how all of these measures connect, and then you can think about what will give you the most bang for your buck. And I have to recognize Alex Hayes from the National Research Council that funded the further research that came up with these 3 Cs, as we call them. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, we hope you visit this site and find it useful. Municipalities are our key audience, stakeholders who want to take more time with a database versus something that's meant for somebody who's new to the whole area. So this is really meant for people who know something about climate adaptation and retrofits, want to figure out what to do, and want to know where to start. And for municipalities, this is also what you can use to think about what do you want to prioritize in terms of your bylaws or incentives, etc. And finally, I should mention that ICLEI that was mentioned before, we partnered with them so that our research would inform their options card. So now when you go to climateinsight.ca, our research is embedded in that, in those option cards, so that all of our work is working together and not in competition. Yeah, that's about it. So thank you so much for your time, and please contact us if you have any questions. My email's there.
Thank you, Charmaline. It's great to hear that it's getting embedded into climateinsights.ca. I'll flag to folks that there are, again, lots of links posted in the chat. And the very last one there has a heading database tutorial. I did watch that tutorial. It's extremely helpful and I highly recommend it. So we are moving on to our panel questions. So I'm going to actually stop sharing the screen for a moment. That'll take me just a second to... Wonderful. Okay. And I'm going to start with our first panel questions. We will get to questions in the Q&A box as well. But to start things off, I have a question that I'll have Lucas answer first. Can you share one of your favorite success stories about a climate resilient building project and highlight an element of it that you think made it a success?
Sure. Thanks, Bo. And thanks for all the wonderful presentations from the speakers today. Super insightful. So earlier in my presentation, I showed pictures from Jasper, and that was from a site visit that I led with a team of housing and wildfire experts. We were fortunate enough to visit this Jasper just after the wildfire, and our goal was to learn and better understand how structures respond to wildfires. And so we developed a series of evidence-based recommendations for how Jasper could build back better. And how we could use those learnings to inform potentially design and housing changes in other communities to prevent those types of disasters. And so we developed a series of evidence-based recommendations, and it turned out that the municipality of Jasper, as well as Parks Canada, took those recommendations quite seriously and updated their housing requirements so that way homes that were being rebuilt in Jasper will now have some elements of fire smart design. And they're exploring ways to encourage fire smart retrofits amongst the community as well, just understanding that community is only as strong as its weakest link. And yeah, what's really nice and amazing about this is it's been an inspiration for other communities across Alberta and across Canada to introduce new fire smart housing requirements. So we're looking at Banff and Canmore. And even at the provincial level, at places like Manitoba and BC, they're considering ways to reduce community-wide risk from wildfires. So these are some of the first examples of the country. They're being supported by some really good resources and expertise and learnings. And we hope that it can continue to inspire other changes, and just great for folks to know that support and resources exist out there for you to take those proactive steps and protect your communities and reduce the risk of damage.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you for sharing that. It's particularly timely right now. And it's nice to hear that there was opportunities for learning after Jasper's wildfires. Charmaline, I'll pass it over to you to see if you have a success story that you would like to share.
Thank you so much. I'm thinking about two related ones, really ones that involve community engagement and walking hand in hand with property owners and property managers to assess risk, assess what to do, and to implement the changes. So the first is the Clean Foundations Resilient Home Retrofit Program. I'll put that in the chat. We partnered with them on a flood resilient retrofit handbook for contractors to bridge the gap between the highly technical guides and the very basic checklists so that you have something that contractors and homeowners can use so that you know what to do. But what I love about this program is that, here's an organization that started with energy audits, as so many organizations across Canada have, and now they are also specializing in resilient retrofits for floods and other hazards, and marrying the two so that when you, as part of this pilot project, when you have an assessment, you get assessed for energy efficiency and for floods in this case as the pilot. And then they work with you and the contractors to implement the actual measures. So it really helps make things easier for you. It reminds me of the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority's SNAP program, where they would work with neighborhoods and uh, come to a street and say, hey, we're going to bring a digger for rain gardens or whatever it is, or we're going to bring rain barrels on this day, and just working as a community with support along the way to make things easier for people like me who I know what to do, but do I do it? No, because it just drops down on my list until I get flooded, for example. So um, that's the kind of example that I love to see is an environmental not-for-profit working with the municipality, working with contractors, everybody working together to do something practical.
Thank you, Charmaline. I'll have you stay unmuted, Charmaline, so you can answer our next question, which is, do you have any advice for municipalities who are aiming to embed an equity lens when undertaking a climate resilient building project?
Thank you. Yes, so there's just so much when it comes to how to be equitable, with equity as fairness, not equality as fairness, given that people have different requirements, needs, access to resources, confidence, opportunities, etc. So one way to go about this is to think about who's disproportionately impacted by any kind of hazard or shock or disturbance, and then map the proxy data for that. So at Partners for Action, we worked with Canadian Red Cross, cooperators. There's other people that have been doing similar work since that have built upon the work that our researchers have done, especially one PhD student, Lytton Chakraborty, who then went on to work for the federal government. But basically, if you map census data, and I'll give you resources in a minute, but if you map who you're wanting to prioritize or who you're concerned about, then you can at least have a place to start because you don't have infinite resources. So where do you start based on your equity priorities? We also partnered with Healthy Plan City. I don't know if anybody knows that site, but what I really love about this site, it's really easy to understand where you can say to yourself, okay, I am concerned about floods in our area. Plus, I wonder where low income older people live or visible minorities live, and see where the environmental injustice is. Do they have tree canopy? Where should we plant trees in that example? Where are people most at risk and who is living there? And then how should we reach out to them? So in terms of embedding equity, it's a multi-prong approach, in my view, where you want to understand who is affected, figure out how you can address those inequities, and think about how to engage those people. We did some more research on inclusive, resilient communications. So different groups of people have different modes of receiving information. How do you think about that when you're going about your education campaigns and action-oriented campaigns? So I've put a bunch of resources there. Um, Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing those resources. I was just going to go look for some of those links and then they all popped into the chat. So thank you, Charlene. Devin, did you have anything to add to the equity piece?
Sure. Thanks, Bo. Thanks, Charlene. It's always a hard, once you're on a string of ideas, the links start flowing and they just keep coming. I guess where I would come in is, and maybe three distinct points. I mean, one, to think about how you consult on the design and operations of a building. So whether you're just getting started, new build, or a retrofit, how you're holding those engagements, whether it's practical things like timing of meetings, formats, input processes. Some people might be able to travel, others might not. To those, are you talking to the visitors to the building, the occupants, and the operators? Because each of them might have different constraints on mobility or other factors. So how are you factoring that into the design and the experience they'll have in the building? That comes then to the building experience. Things like natural lighting often help people with low vision. They also help reduce the energy and operating costs of a building. Using more ramps and other easier ways to change levels between the buildings helps with mobility, whether you're in a wheelchair, you're pushing a stroller, or other factors. And it also saves energy in operating elevators and those mechanical systems. And then lastly, and very important, is that the building itself is not an island. And I've seen some great examples where we develop a LEED or a net zero building that you can only drive to, or that in the event of a climate impact is cut off because your emergency services building was built on the other side of a river that always floods, and now the emergency vehicles can't get to the municipality. Or in the case, if you're a lot of communities in the prairies are often cut in half by rail lines and trains that stop in the middle of the town. And if your fire hall is on one side and the fire is on the other, that's really changes the resiliency and the utility of that building in the community. So thinking about, how are people arriving at the building, their mobility options, accessibility considerations, and the emissions impact with those, how people move between buildings, where they're coming from, where they're going to. Are there covered walkways that help reduce slippery surfaces, fall reduction for elderly people or people with mobility limitations? Is there good lighting? Is it creating a safe space? They could walk out of a beautiful building and then right down a dark alley that gets them to the bus stop. So think about those different dimensions that bring accessibility and equity into the design.
Thank you, Devin. That was really a nice compliment to all the links Charlene shared around data that can be used, bringing in the importance of inclusive engagement into that conversation and pairing it up with the data, thinking about co-benefits that you mentioned, energy and operating costs, and then really looking at it holistically and that the building's not an island. Those are really, really wonderful points. Thank you. I'll let you stay unmuted, Devin, and maybe briefly share if there's any emerging trends or opportunities in climate resilient building design that municipalities might be wanting to pay attention to.
Yeah, no, thanks. So I guess two quick ones I'll make is that, that systems approach in thinking about the building in context, especially in light of, climate impacts. So how is it going to be, where it's not just the building itself, but how is it sited related to potential flooding, fires, or other risks? How are buildings being thought as a portfolio? And Climate Insights can help with this as you look through options. You can select both an individual building or a group of buildings by asset. Can help find cost savings, efficiencies if you're going to be retrofitting several arenas in your community or libraries, or especially if you're starting to look at housing when there's often a lot of a similar kind of building type that needs retrofits. Yeah, so I think those maybe are two key things I'm seeing, along with the emergence of more real-time data availability to inform those decisions. But at the same time, making sure the operators of the building have the training and skills to not be outsmarted by our smart buildings.
Thank you, Devin. Yes, that real-time data piece is quite interesting, but you make a good point about ensuring operators are trained. Purya, I'd like to invite you to also reflect on the emerging trends or opportunities question as well.
Yeah, again, from I guess a climate science background, I think one of the biggest changes is the move from relying solely on historical data towards incorporating more future climate projection into building design. So, for example, we have a number of different building specific data sets that are available to engineers, architects, and building designers, and they can use those, and they're available on climatedata.ca. I think one of them feature weather files that are available for building simulations. Those were historically done based on like a data from like 1998 to 2017. But if you're designing a building that is going to last 50, 100 years, like you want to be using future adjusted weather files. Another one was the future design values that are going to be in the building code, and I had in my presentation. The other ones are future climate zones. So we used to historically rely on heating degree days to classify like what climate zones buildings are in. And based on that, you can select like what type of insulation you're putting in. But the climate zones historically we're like seeing a reduction in heating degree days. So like the climate zones are shifting, and we might want to look into more of cooling degree days as well, including cooling systems, and making sure our buildings are able to withstand extreme temperatures in the future as well. So yeah, these data sets are available, and yeah, municipalities have an opportunity to lead by using these data to update their code standards, guidelines, and policies to support long-term decision making. Yeah.
Thank you, Purya. I heard you already touch on building codes a little. That really leads nicely into a question we actually received uh, ahead of the webinar. As part of the registration process, participants can actually submit questions ahead of time. And there's one that we pulled that we thought would be of interest to the broader audience. How can building codes be improved to better address climate risks and make new buildings and homes more resilient? I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to what you've already shared, Purya, around building codes.
Sure. So the design value summaries that I shared is a complement to the data that is going to be in the 2025 update of the building code. So for the first time ever, I think anywhere, the Canada's national building code is going to include future climate data within the design values. So that is going to be available in the building code and is then passed on to different jurisdiction for either adaptation of it, or they can decide as a minimum to change those and improve on those. So in terms of improvement and what we can do, obviously as climate science advances, we're going to get better at generating higher resolution climate data with higher confidence in the projection. So for example, for some of the variables like wind speed or snow loads, where we're going to get better at having design values for those that are important and critical for building design, especially at like a building scale. And then I think the other thing that I was thinking about would be kind of rethinking about how we're using like the design values in the building code currently. Most data that is used by engineers is based on a single value design. In terms of future climate projections, as we see those included in the building code, we want to be using a range of different values to include possible future conditions. So we can't really be looking at a single design value. We want to be looking at different emission scenarios, different time periods. As again, building system components, as Devin mentioned, they might have different design service life. So we want to not only rely on a single value, but also include a range of different projections.
Thank you. Lucas, did you have anything you wanted to add on the building design, on building codes? And Poria, there's a few questions in the Q&A that are specific to climatedata.ca that have come up.
Sure, just a couple quick ones for me, and it was already highlighted a number of times throughout the presentations today. But in terms of improving building codes, it's making sure that we find co-benefits with the solutions that we're proposing. Industry, and that be builders, policymakers, insurance companies, they don't want to see a patchwork approach where we're asking them to change many different times. I think we need holistic solutions that consider all of the challenges homes are going to face today and into the future, so that way we can minimize this like kind of patchwork approach to hardening them for our climate. We also need to continue engaging with the industry to find solutions that work. Far too often, it's a top-down approach where building codes move forward and we don't engage with the people who have to implement them or the ones responsible for finding the solutions to meet it affordably. And so making sure that we're creating better communication channels for all the best information to get put forward in a timely way. And then lastly, and I saw many questions in the chat kind of alluding to this, but it's developing programs and grant programs, loan programs in parallel with new policies and codes, so that way we can subsidize those costs. We're in an affordability crisis. A lot of what we're talking about here today adds costs to homeowners, and we need to get a little bit more creative around how we can spread those costs out, not just to the homeowner who lives in the house today, but if the house is going to last 50 or 100 years, how can we take those investments in resiliency and adaptation and attribute them as a cost of living in that area rather than a burden that we're putting on that homeowner today. So I think there's a lot of work for us to do there to see some rapid uptake of a lot of these measures that we're talking about. But like I mentioned at the outset, it's costing us all to not make these decisions today. So it's important that we're considering them.
Thank you, Lucas. It was really nice to bring in the costing and affordability piece into your response. I did see some questions in the Q&A that have some answers provided there, but also to get into the idea of taking that into consideration when designing the building codes, doing more engagement, including with industry, some really fabulous points. I'm seeing lots of questions being answered in the Q&A, which is really appreciated. Thank you, speakers, for doing that. I know Puria is working on some responses that are specific to climatedata.ca portal. I am going to start sharing my screen again because we are reaching the end. And since I have seen questions being answered in the chat, I'll let speakers wrap that up. And also encourage folks who pose questions to take a look at that chat because I see answers being provided. There was one additional little piece that I posted in the chat as well around affordability and options coming from GMF. All right, just looking to click on the right button here. Okay. So thank you very much to all of our speakers for your time today. It's really appreciated. If you didn't get a chance to grab these links earlier, they are in the chat. We do want to take a moment to invite you to sign up for our next webinar in the GMF series. The link for it is posted in the chat. It will showcase experts and municipal leaders who have developed urban forest management plans, and they'll share the benefits that these plans bring to local communities. I want to extend a huge thank you to all of our speakers, Lucas, Devin, Poria, Charmaline, for coming here today, for sharing your expertise, for sharing all kinds of tools and insights. I wish we had more time to dive into all of them. They're all wonderful resources, and for sharing links to them so folks can continue to explore, highlighting ways of gaining more support, reaching out with email addresses and links and places to get more direction and be able to take next steps from here. So thank you.